Hi guys, welcome to the Attic. My name's Mark Jago. I'm a philosophy professor in the UK. In this video, I want to start off talking about religion and atheism. So this is going to be the first part of a whole series of videos on atheism. I'm going to cover this as a whole series rather than as just one video because I think it's such an important topic that, I don't want to just have a little dabble into some of the arguments. I want to get really deep into the arguments. Okay, so we're going to basically devote one video to all of the key issues that we're going to be thinking about when we think about what is atheism, how do we understand it, what is it, what isn't it, what are the arguments for it, what are the arguments against it, what kinds of views about the world, about ethics, about morality, about meaning should atheists adopt. Okay, so that is what we're going for over the next few weeks. So if that sounds good to you, you can do me a favor before we get going. Give this video a thumbs up. That really helps me out. And you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube and hit that bell icon to get notifications. Okay, so I think understanding atheism, coming to a really clear understanding of what atheism is, what it isn't, is going to be increasingly important, like in world terms over the coming years. So according to one study, between 2015 and 2020, 12 million people worldwide left their religion. They left their religion behind for some reason or another. So clearly those people all felt some kind of drive away from their religion. For whatever reason that was, they felt compelled to leave their religion behind. Now, often, as we're going to see in these videos, that can be a really, really difficult thing to do. Nevertheless, people are doing it in pretty large numbers. But what people often find is that when you make that move, when you leave religion behind, there can be something of a void left there. And, sometimes that void can be filled with bad stuff. Sometimes it can be just not filled at all. And maybe in its own way, that in itself is bad. So I think these are some of the reasons why it's practically important, it's socially important to come to a good understanding of what atheism is, what kind of worldviews it could encompass. Not just thinking about the cosmic origins of the universe or whatever, but thinking about how we should act, how we fill our lives with meaning and purpose. The other aspect why I think it's really important to be clarifying and understanding what atheism is about is there's lots of discrimination and prejudice around the world directed against atheists. So there are loads of things we could cite here, laws against atheism. But let me just give you one stat. In many countries around the world, the vast majority of people think that you have to believe in God in order to be a decent moral person. So if you're an atheist or you don't believe in God, you are just a bad person. So for instance, in Indonesia and the Philippines, 96% of people, nearly everyone, thinks that you have to believe in God in order to be a decent moral person. In Kenya, the number's 95%, 84% in South Africa and Brazil. That's quite a lot of people around the world thinking that basically atheists just can't be decent people. So the numbers aren't like that everywhere in the world. In the US, it's 44% of people who think this, and then in the UK, it's falling to 20%, and in Sweden, it's as low as 9%. So those numbers really do vary around the world, I guess, depending on how kind of secular and educated your society is. Nevertheless, there are an awful lot of people out there who think that basically atheism is just incompatible with morality, with being a decent person. And, that is going to affect the way that you interact, the way you treat, the way you legislate for atheists, right? So it's kind of important that whatever your views on this are, that we get clear and we understand what atheism is and what it isn't. Okay, so let's spend a bit of time thinking about exactly what do we mean by atheism. Well, it's simple, right? It's just not believing in God. That's what an atheist is, right? It's someone who doesn't believe in God. Well, no, that's not quite right. So let me explain. A theist is somebody who has a positive belief in God or in gods, in the existence of some god or some gods, okay? So, if you believe in the existence of God or of some gods, then you're a theist. But there are lots of different reasons why you might not have a belief like that. Take the case of small kids, infants, right? Maybe they just don't have any beliefs at all. They maybe have a really basic belief about the world, like that's my mummy there, but they don't have any kind of complex beliefs about stuff like God. They just have no belief either way. It's just not the kind of thing they can have a belief about. We don't really want to call them atheists. You know, they are just not the kind of person that we want to yet say, yep, they're an atheist or they're not an atheist. Even amongst adults, right? There are people who just haven't thought about the issue that much, or they don't care about the issue, or maybe they do, but they say, yeah, you know what, I haven't yet decided. The as yet to be decided people. They don't say, yep, God does exist, or no, God doesn't exist. So the undecideds, right? They're not atheists, they're just undecided on the issue. And then you have agnostics. These are people who say, okay, look, we've looked at the issue, we've looked at all the evidence, we've looked at all the arguments for God, against God, and basically there's just no way of knowing. The arguments, they're just not convincing, or they're not convincing enough on either side, so there is just no rational way of coming to know that God does exist or that God doesn't exist. So we are withholding our belief. They don't believe in God, they don't believe that God does exist, they don't believe that God doesn't exist, they just think you can't know either way. That's agnosticism. They're agnostics. They're not atheists, okay? So if they're not atheists, what are atheists? Well, the atheists are the people who have thought about the issue and have a definite opinion. And their opinion is God doesn't exist, okay? So to be a theist, you have the belief that God or gods do exist. And to be an atheist, you have a belief. You have the belief that God or gods don't exist. So it's not the negation of theism, right? Having the belief is theism. Not having the belief is atheism. No. Both theists and atheists have a definite belief about how the world is. Theists say, yep, God does exist. And atheists say, no, God doesn't exist. Now, okay, I put that definition in terms of having a definite belief. And yes, sometimes to a lot of people it feels like that. Okay, we have a definite belief one way or the other, or sometimes we just have no belief. But often beliefs come in degrees, right? So if you're thinking about something like, is it going to rain later, or is your team going to win at the weekend? You might not have a definite belief one way or the other. You might have some kind of, 0.2 credence or a 50% credence or whatever. Okay, so beliefs might come in degrees, and it might be like that with belief or disbelief in God, in God's existence, right? So you might say, well, I've looked at all the evidence and I think that God's existence is very likely or highly unlikely. So this would give you kind of not a black or white belief in God's existence, but a kind of a shaded belief, right? So I maybe assign 0.2 credence or 0.1 credence or whatever in God's existence. So maybe there's a continuum of degrees of belief, with one end being kind of definite theists and then the other end being definite atheists. Okay, that's not a problem for this view, because on just about any issue we might take some kind of intermediate degree of credence. We might believe it more or less strongly or whatever. Still, we can group people into the theists and the atheists and the people in the middle who haven't yet decided, and the boundaries between them might be a little bit fuzzy. Okay, so this definition, it's really, really simple, and basically that's all you have to think to count as an atheist. Okay, it's a very, very minimal definition of atheism. So I'm going to call this core atheism. In order to be an atheist, the only thing you need to do is have the belief that God or gods don't exist. That's all there is to it. That's core atheism. That leaves nearly everything else up for grabs. Okay, so what do you think about the origins of the universe, about human happiness and flourishing, about morality, about meaning and purpose in lives? Well, that's up for grabs, okay? There's no one theory that says, okay, as an atheist, you must believe this, you must believe that about meaning and purpose and ethics and whatever. The only thing that you need to believe to count as an atheist is that God or gods don't exist. Nevertheless, pretty obviously there are plenty of things that we can say as atheists about all of those issues without relying on religious views or the existence of God or whatever. Atheists can give coherent accounts of meaning and purpose in life, of morality and ethics, of all of these kind of things. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing over some of the videos in this series. So we're going to be talking about issues like, meaning and purpose, the meaning of life, and can an atheist worldview kind of come up with an account of meaning that, as it were, fills the void that's left when you reject religion? Is it somehow the kind of religious account of meaning, kind of God suffusing physical reality with his presence? Is the atheist's account of meaning somehow inferior to that because it doesn't kind of feel as fancy or whatever? Or is it okay for the atheist to say, you know what, I'm rejecting all of that. I don't think it will be better if God exists. I think that atheists on their own terms can come up with perfectly good senses of meaning that's just as good as the religious one. So is that kind of line the kind of thing that atheists can reasonably say? That's the kind of thing we're going to be going into in some of the subsequent videos. Another issue that I'm going to spend some time thinking about, and I think this is a really important one practically, is once you have got your atheism on the table, so, let's suppose you've decided to be an atheist, you've looked at all the arguments and you say, okay, yeah, atheism looks like a pretty good bet philosophically. Then the question is, what do you do with that practically or socially or whatever? Okay. What kind of atheist are you going to be? Are you going to be a militant, new atheist type of person who basically thinks that the world would be better off rid of religion? And are you going to go out there and try to make that a reality? Kind of good luck to you. Or are you going to say, you know what? I think, intellectually speaking, religion isn't for me because I've seen the arguments and, I'm pretty convinced that God doesn't exist. That's why I'm an atheist. Nevertheless, I want to be able to get on with people socially. So we have to kind of have some accommodation. We have to have some kind of sense of how do we live in a tolerant way? How do we have a tolerant society that's also going to be a secular society? So it's not going to be dominated by religion. It's not going to be legislated on religious grounds, but nevertheless, there is plenty of room there for all the different religions and non-religious people to get on harmoniously. Okay. That's really where I'm going to be going with this series. So kind of later on in the series, I'm going to be thinking about new atheist arguments, not so much for should you be an atheist, but more for what you do with your atheism. Okay. Questions like, would the world be better off if religion were kind of expunged from it? Okay. Would that really make the world a better place? Looking at all the kind of really bad stuff that goes on in the world, just how much of that is the fault of religion? How much of it is caused by religion? Okay. It's not that simple. So we're going to be taking a bit of a dive into some of those issues. And I think, not to give the game away too much, but I think what's going to be coming out of it is your best bet is on tolerance. How are you going to marry your atheist principles? I don't believe in God. I think it's irrational to believe in God, with accommodating all the different kinds of beliefs that are out there in the world in order to have a tolerant society. Okay, so I guess that a lot of this video is me telling you guys what we're going to be doing in the future rather than doing it now. So I think I've gone on for that long enough. So I hope you stick with me. I hope you come back and stick with this series and get something out of it. If you have enjoyed this so far, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that bell icon to get notifications. You can now support the channel financially on Ko-fi if you're in a position to do that. I want to give a big shout out to the supporters we've already got there on Ko-fi who've signed up to help support this channel. Thank you so much, guys. That makes me feel really positive about the future of this channel and the future of getting, good quality philosophical discussion out there on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you've got any questions about this or about where we're going, leave me a question down in the comments. I'm going to try and answer all of them. And I hope to see you back here for more Attic philosophy soon.